I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for coming. We need to, it's a side thing, we need to let the state know. We need that mic available. State building.
Yes.
Okay. We'll just do with introductions. Dale Stein, Chair.
Ryan White, city voting member. Brian Steinmuller, Assistant Director, Division of Water Resources at Ag and Markets.
Greg Albrecht, Ag and Markets in the State Soil Water Conservation Committee. Tim Clark, engineer from State Committee. Ben Luskin, Region 5 AEA. EJ Emmerich, Region 2 AEA.
Jennifer Clifford, Sierra Program Manager.
Yes, Ag and Points, Program Manager.
Administrative assistant. And the Hawkins Director of the Soil Water Conservation District.
And Mo, Executive Director for Yucca County and DP Work Advisory Member.
Russell Bach, that's the Governor. Brian Cunningham, State Committee Field Staff, Region 4. Follow-up program roles for the State Committee. Brad Brower, voting member.
And Bethany Bisdu, Executive Director of the State Soil and Water Conservation Committee.
Thank you. Welcome again. Review and approve minutes. Do we have any additions or corrections? Motion to approve, please. And second?
I'll second.
All in favor, aye? We'll do for introductions. You want to introduce yourself, everybody?
There's plenty of chairs to table.
You're more than welcome to sit with the rest of us. One more introductions, please.
President Conservation District Employees Association. Bring everyone.
Glad you could all come today. Minutes were approved. Correspondence, Bethany, budget update at the same time.
Yeah, so no correspondence to share with the state committee today, and unfortunately, no budget update that I am aware of. We are still waiting on a budget approval. Very close, according to Brian, so.
We're passing around a sign-in sheet. Please, everybody sign in when you get a chance. All right, on our agenda next is annual organizational meeting.
Yeah, so I think this is probably a little bit later in the year than what we would typically do, but I wanted to hold an annual organizational meeting to nominate and elect a chair and vice chair. I think we are going to, with the other voting members' concurrence, table that portion of the agenda. We are missing 2 voting members today, so I think we will pass on that part of the agenda and bring that back at a future meeting. But I would like to discuss the appointment of voting member representatives to the various subcommittees of our State Soil and Water Conservation Committee. This was something that I think I had discussed a couple of times last year and mentioned last month when we were discussing the strategic plan for the state committee. I think it'd be a really great opportunity for voting members to further engage with our partners and soil and water conservation districts and participate a little bit more in some of the program development or policy development discussions. So, Dale, how would you like to proceed here?
Beth and I sent the email from yesterday about forming a subcommittee, appointing voting members, not by name, but by the position you represent to that committee. So if you change, so as time changes and different members are in under that same like Farm Bureau, Soil and Water, that person would then be on that subcommittee. So that we get across. So hopefully we can get at least one to attend meetings that way because of conflicts of time. We have multiples for each of the 4 different ones. And, would you take notes on what we spoke about? So we have each of the 5 different positions kind of assigned each of those 4, and Bethany will explain them, and then we'll have a little discussion on what we decide.
So the first subcommittee is our district operations subcommittee, and this committee is made up of soil and water conservation districts and state committee staff, mainly tasked with updating the district operations manual. That is how that subcommittee kind of came to be in the first place, but I see that group going beyond just maintaining that district operations manual, but really helping to address operational issues that come up at districts from time to time. So my recommendation to the voting members would be for the NYACD rep and the urban, suburban, rural, non-ag at-large position to represent the voting members on that subcommittee.
Any comments? This isn't a case where you have to attend. We want to get it so that we can get a voting member to be able to attend. And there are certain times of the year, no, you're not going to be able to get attendance, but, and most of these don't have meetings every single month anyway. So there's something that, if it's an off time of year where you may be able to attend one, would help our position and our decision making if we have a better idea what the subcommittees are doing. So it's kind of the voting members and the better understanding.
Yeah, thank you, Dale. So yeah, just to clarify, for this particular one, the district operations subcommittee, they meet on an as-needed basis. At this point, there isn't a specific frequency for that subcommittee, and we have moved forward, since COVID with generally always offering a hybrid option or maybe an all virtual meeting, and because we wouldn't have a full quorum of the subcommittee meetings, it wouldn't be required for voting members to be on video, so you could just call in and participate, listen in that way as well. Should I just run through the whole list? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So the next subcommittee is our municipal assistance subcommittee. This also is a group that is made up of districts and state committee staff. We also do invite some of our advisory members who work within that realm to participate in that subcommittee. Again, that group meets on an as-needed basis as issues come up and we want to discuss them. But it's to help share information for districts and state committee on municipal assistance and to help districts develop municipal assistance programs, and largely focused on work in the non-ag sector. So my recommendation for voting member participation on this subcommittee would also be the same. NYACD rep and the urban, suburban, rural, non-ag interests representative. The next subcommittee is our technical advisory subcommittee. So this is a group that is made up of state committee staff and all of the advisory members to the state committee. So we have 9 advisory members that we have representatives from 9 different entities or agencies that act in an advisory capacity to the state committee. We use this committee to discuss policies, technical issues, and review proposed changes to our programs, our requests for proposals, to get their advice and recommendations to move forward to our state committee meetings. So for this group, I'm going to recommend 3 voting members. However, I think when we have these meetings, we'll just have to make sure that only two of those three attend, so we don't have a full quorum and it doesn't become a formal state meeting. With the Technical Advisory Committee, we do meet more regularly. Generally, we shoot to meet on a quarterly basis, so it's usually January, April, July, and September. About 4 times a year, we try to get one of those meetings in. So my recommendation would be for this group, our Grange representative, Farm Bureau representative, and the at-large farm interests representative. And for our last subcommittee, it's the State Programs Advisory Committee. This is a relatively new group that we formed between state committee staff and soil and water conservation districts. This is a platform where we can communicate more regularly with our soil and water district partners about programs, program development, program ideas, everything state programs. So, and we have been meeting with this group regularly so far on an every other month basis. So we have a meeting coming up at the end of April, and then we'll schedule another one in June. If we intend is to maintain that every other month schedule for the duration, unless we start to feel like we don't need them as frequently, or even we might have meetings more frequently. But again, they're offered in a hybrid basis with virtual options, and the recommended voting members wouldn't be required to attend all of them, but certainly encouraged. So for this, I would recommend the same as the Technical Advisory Committee, our Grange rep, Farm Bureau rep, and the at-large farm interest representative.
Questions, anyone? Yeah, we get reports on what happens at the committee, but at these meetings, but you don't, without being there, we don't have a good understanding truly. It'll be better for voting members to understand subcommittee a little better, so we can get some participation in them. Yeah, and we can't have 3, here we would need a legal definition, but I don't think we'll get 3 showing up anybody with time schedules.
I just know from years ago.
Any other discussion? Motion to approve, please.
I'll make a motion.
Second? I'll second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Approved. Thank you. Help us in the future, hopefully. Next on our agenda is economic source, Jason and Tyler.
Real quick though, before you go, you two, I do just want to welcome Jason to the back to the state committee meeting. He's joined us. This is what, a couple of weeks in now. Diving right into program development and administration and taking off. Welcome.
Welcome. We'll be back 5 years ago.
So, quick dashboard updates on that non-point source. I believe there is in your packet. And I'm just going to focus on the bottom line. So I typically do. We have 8 active rounds, a couple closeouts did filter in this past month or so. But we have 365 total contracts. Almost $122 million. Pending contracts, so round 29 is still pending. There's 32 contracts of those, and that's at $13.4 million. Total active contracts were at 145 across all the rounds. That's just almost $52 million. Included contracts, as I said, there were a couple closeouts that filtered in, so we're at 176. Included contracts across those 8 rounds, and that's valued at just almost $54 million. So making progress. Round 22, we do still have one active contract.
Questions, anyone, comments? Yeah, just check and let's see what round 22 is doing.
Sure.
Getting out there quite a bit, and hopefully you'll be able to close it out this year.
I know Jason and I are going to spend some time over the next couple of weeks. Once everything's kind of updated and I get to a point, it's a good time to meet and really just go through what we have. Because sometimes things slip through or we miss some of this stuff.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a question.
Thank you. Any other questions? Amendment?
That role was not here, I can keep the contract or we have follow-up questions. The first time we have the component for the application of contract, and this is an for a 1-year time sensitive, June 30th of this year, 2024 to, June 30th of, this year, 2025. We will be implementing that.
Questions, comments, anyone? Motion approved. Second. Moved and seconded, go to voting, all in favor, aye? I think myself too. Approved, thank you. Next.
Next contract, one from Wyoming County. Also, and they were also requesting a 1-year. June 30th. Still in the design phase. They have the engineers on staff who finalize the design. They're mostly shovel ready, but we're going to stay over the time. And paperwork is grants processing as needed. Bank has also supported this request and will participate for discussion.
Questions, anyone, comments? I think I can get it done by the end of June. Problem, it's gotta be pretty big.
I believe they're building a waste storage and transfer system as part of this grant.
I would think it'd be pretty big. But, I mean, it's one construction for the big company, it's no more than a month. If they can get the spring to get it done, they can probably meet that day. And move the second, please. Sorry. Moved and seconded, all in favor, aye? Right. Approved. Thank you.
First one can be on the bottom of our county. The district would requesting a 1-year contract extension for the end of this calendar year. The only remote managed component of the system that will be installed is an ETA. They are just looking to install this year. ETA and everything is here. Speak more of that.
PJ?
Well, just, they need to finish up the ETA and get it the way that it needs to be.
Any other questions or comments? Motion, please. Move second. Moved and seconded, all voting, say aye, please. Approved, thank you. Next.
Requesting a 6-month extension to finish up this year due to weather. Okay, just the weather will go on like we were hospital and the rest of it. Over another 6 months, I'm sure it'll be over.
Any other questions or comments as well? Motion, please. Move second, please.
Second.
Move in second. All in favor, aye? Approved, thank you. No other amendments, anything else on non-point source?
No change on the round 29 contracts. I guess we'll just share that. They are still being reviewed by council, but we're in a pause right now with contract processing. It's kind of like a end of the year pause, similar to payments. We kind of have to stop processing payments. But once that ends, I think we'll be able to get contracts out to districts for signature.
The recent Victor couldn't come, he got halfway here and had car problems, he had to go back home. Way up the thruway, would have been fun. Should have carpooled with me, met me at Leroy and rode up with us, easy for me. Next time. Next on our agenda is CRF, Jennifer and Tyler.
So CRF dashboards, 6 active rounds. Focusing on the bottom one again, 99 total contracts across those 6 rounds. And that's at $33.7 million. Similar to Ag non-point round 7, as far as I'm aware, they are all still pending. All the contracts are still pending, so 60 of those. And that's just about $16 million. Active contracts, we have 71 across the 6 rounds, and that's about $1.1 million. Committed contracts, we are at 50, and that's $4.4 million. So as you can see, similar to Ag non-point round 2, I believe we have 1 active contract.
Questions, anyone? Comments, discussion? Any amendments today?
No amendments. We have a few amendments next month. Round 7. Have plan most and round 8, council has two of our appraisals, so we're working at these. Are interested in hopefully doing an on-farm announcement. So we would in the next 2 weeks. Once we release, we do goal is to have awards announced in the fall. And so we'll
Any questions for Jennifer or Tyler? Thank you. Next on the agenda is strategic funds.
So I actually have it up pretty enough projected. I didn't print off another draft copy for everything, but we'll send a version around. You guys can look at it if you want. While we're getting into it, I'll just remind folks, so last month, we, gave a pretty extensive presentation about the state committee strategic plan, went through, each portion of it, from start to finish, and, there were a couple of comments that came in that we wanted to incorporate into the plan, today. Mine is in our statement of values section where, we state what the values are of the state water conservation committee. We did have a comment last month in our staff section, suggesting that we place more emphasis on the need to make sure we're providing access to all of our programs and services to all communities, to really recognize the diversity, equity, inclusion components of the climate leadership and community protection act. So throughout the plan, we did build in a couple different references to making sure we're recognizing those historically underrepresented communities and working with the department through the department's ongoing initiative to make sure that we are providing information about our programs and the services that are available from the water conservation districts. So, they have the language that you see here on the screen in red, fourth bullet of our values section. That now states that, the state committee values a strong voluntary incentive-based local delivery system conservation districts that provides access to conservation programs and district and focuses on the long-term adoption. Keeping that language in there just kind of further emphasizes that we want to provide access to the conservation program to everyone and encourage long-term adoption. Everyone who's interested and willing. Is in the first strategic goal, the district operations goal, and take some feedback and comments from the district online. Requesting that we try to incorporate an objective that focuses on increasing access to funding for districts in general. In a previous version of the plan, we had placed in this particular section a goal to increase state aid to districts funding. There's also later on in the plan an area, I believe, in the watershed. It's in the comprehensive in our program section where we focus on watershed coalitions, where there's a bullet that has a goal to increase access to funding for districts within a watershed coalition structure. But the district down the line really thought it would be good to put an objective in here to increase access to funding for districts to support operations and staff capacity more in a general sense. And I thought that was a really good comment. We still have a goal and an objective to continue to advocate for increased state aid and district funding. But this just further emphasizes the need for additional funding by districts to support their capacity and their operations beyond state funding. That's it. Any questions?
Any questions at all on the plan?
During the March Soil and Water Conservation Committee, Elizabeth Henderson from the Organic Farmers Organization was on the line, and she was part of the group that drafted changes to district law and ag and markets law and environmental conservation law. And she made some recommendations for the state committee's strategic plan. I just want everyone to be aware that this group is still active. They're still able to participate in these meetings. And I was alarmed to see her participation on the state committee's meeting in March. Just for all of us to be aware that this group is still interested in attending state committee meetings. And again, it's important that we don't forget that the Watershed Health Coalition drafted changes to district law, environmental conservation law, ag and markets law without any one of us knowing it. Thank you, Dr. Meehan.
Thank you.
Further comments? A motion to approve the strategic plan for 24, 28.
Second.
Moving and second, about a voting, all in favor? Aye. Awesome. Approved. Thank you, Bethany, for all the work you put into it. Hopefully, we don't have to do this one every year.
When you look from
Since we're ahead of schedule, we're gonna keep right on going. Next on our agenda is Laura, the people-based management program.
Good morning.
I'm Lauren Pazorski. I'm the program manager for ecosystem-based management. I'm going to go through a couple slides to begin with to explain what that program is. And then hopefully have some time, because we're ahead of schedule. I guess you can probably take as much as you want or as little as you want, but and we can talk about how the state committee can be more involved. So to start with, I'd like to give a little history, why do we have another program? Why do we need another program? So I'll give you a little history on how ecosystem-based management came about, why. Back in 2006, I believe it was Governor Pataki on his way out, signed the New York State Ocean and Great Lakes Ecosystem Conservation Act. It's in environmental conservation law, Article 14, if anybody wants to look it up. Anyways, the act, when it was signed in, created the Ecosystem Conservation Council, which has representatives from multiple agencies. Originally, it was considered 9 agencies of New York State that all had jurisdiction over land use. But if you look at that list on the bottom there, DEC, Department of State, Ag and Markets, Parks, OGS, Transportation, Empire State Development, the SWCC system, and NYSERDA. It is, the council is co-chair, the responsibility is shared between DEC and Department of State. For that. But anyway, we saw that list and it's like jurisdiction over land use, but wait a minute. That's not the end of the list. So in 2011, with district's help and other partners' help, the state committee was added as a member to the council, along with the Department of Health, DEC, and Department of Education. So what is ecosystem-based management? Is the approach that New York State chose to use to administer the ecosystem conservation councils, approach to addressing concerns in the Great Lakes and the other approach. It's an approach that balances nature, the environment, and economy, community well-being. So basically what it's saying is it's the watershed approach. I remember when I was first brought in, it was just to talk about, you're going to be the ecosystem-based program manager. And, describing what this program is. It's like, how is that different? This is just one more way. But it is slightly different because ecosystem-based management, I might be getting ahead of my slides, but basically it looks at humans are part of the ecosystem and they rely on the ecosystem to provide services back to them. So where a lot of our conservation efforts are really just looking at the environment, it looks at humans as part of the environment and the actions. What does that mean? It means that sometimes when we address ecosystem-based management, we're addressing something with the economy and how that affects natural resources or how those natural resources support our economy. So it becomes a little bit more flexible than recreational. These are the principles of EBM, and the ecosystem-based management approach is used throughout the country. So the basic principles are a place-based focus. So you're usually looking at one ecosystem, but you're looking at it saying, how does that ecosystem affect other ecosystems? So it is place-based in that sense. Scientific background in the decision-making on how to address it. So what does that mean? It means that things are changing because science is always changing. The more information we get, we might change our approach. So it's a dynamic system. Measurable objectives to evaluate performance. I love to put in any EBM proposal out there, quantifiable measurements. How many tons of sediment do you think you're going to release? How many pounds? For multiple reasons, because it is measured and also because it helps us tell our story. For the environment. And as I mentioned before, it's adaptive knowledge. Our level of knowledge is always changing. We learn things all the time from science, and how do we change? Recognizing the interconnectedness of it. Ecosystems overlap, our needs overlap. Our desire for different natural resources within it. Hard, and that is probably the biggest criticism of EBM is how you get measurable. The ecosystems are not. And it's involvement of stakeholders, and stakeholders is multiple stakeholders, because if you ask everybody in this room, what do you want to do? Everybody, like we do, somebody in that board person who wants it, recreation. Everybody comes at their own angle. None of them are right and none are wrong. We all share natural resources. So, get a vision of what all the stakeholders would like. And this is funded at the, it's funded through the EPF in a line item that's Ocean and Great Lakes Initiative. When I first started, it was maybe back in 2006, the first few years, it was about 5 million. Last EPF budget, it was 22.5 million. Now, again, all those agencies listed, we don't share them. So we're not talking about millions like economic resource has. Small amount of money. The department, what we do is we'll submit a proposal, an idea. Usually, some years, it's never a set amount. We don't get a percentage of the pot. We'll just propose as needed. Projects, sometimes, it will be 2 million 1 year, the next year maybe it's 500,000. It depends, it's going up and down. But also, leverage around the EPM funds, you may well see federal funding and be partners for different grants or USDA in the past. To maximize the implemented. So we try to implement watershed plans. And as we do, on all our RFPs, we always ask. When it first started, the council was tagged with developing a program, and through that, DEC with partners in the state developed the Great Lakes Action Agenda, which is a great document. And then since then, DEC has been working with the Department of State and all partners, especially some water districts at a local level, for developing what they call 9 element plans. And for different target watersheds, developing those 9 element plans that also make those watersheds eligible. So when we look at EDF, a lot of times we are looking at that list that was developed and the strategies to implement that watershed plan. What did those local stakeholders identify as needs? And then we kind of go off of that. In the past, again, when I was trying to do that 9 element plans with the Great Lakes Action Agenda, every project idea we submit is linked back to those exactly. This project will implement this role of this. So that is what I always ask for water districts to do. RFPs, and just so you know, that is what I do for every program. It's related to that. I would say over the years, 95% of the funding that we've received at Ag and Markets for EPM has gone to unemployment. It is flexible. We used it in the past to update some AIM information, to integrate EPM principles into AIM. We use it for some training, different internal programs to improve our programs, but 95% of it has gone through competitive grants, so most of it, but 95 would probably be a conservative number for how much is gone. So here's the good part. Unlike Ag 9 Source and CRF, they have a lot of, rules in the law. This is how it's do. EVN, we are allowed to target. So where Ag 9 Source, you can target watersheds for it. EVN, we can. We can say, this is a concern in the Finger Lakes watershed. So we're going to do an RFP to, do erosion sediment control practices in just the Finger Lakes. And it's open to those water districts. We can also target EMPs. In the past, we've done ones for irrigation as one, we've done them for erosion sediment control. This is the practice that we want to see implemented. So that's the only one we're talking. So that We're flexible, we can target different pollutants. Sediment is the primary concern in this watershed, therefore we're defining sediment. And then throughout all of them, because of Ocean and Great Lakes Initiative, most of our projects are targeted with the Great Lakes or direct drainage to the ocean. Sometimes they are statewide as well, because of that interconnectedness of ecosystems. What happens in one is going to affect what happens in the other, and there's lessons to be learned statewide. But we will usually give bonus points to projects that are in the Great Lakes. And this is just a few examples of projects we've done over the years, and there's been a bunch more. Not only because the department does projects, but sometimes CEC would pass funding over to us. And we would administer that on their behalf. The most recent one was the culvert assessment. I'm going to say that as a one name. North Atlantic. Can't remember. So anyway, that's in a nutshell what PM is and what the Ocean Great Lakes Initiative is. So now I've been talking to Bethany more lately. Fortunately, she sits right next to me, so she has to listen to me more. On how the state committee is more involved. Because in the past, we've always submitted proposals, and it's pretty much always been agricultural related. There is talk, that as the state committee is a member, we don't always have to focus on ag DMPs or agricultural practices, represent soil and water districts. They are, do all kinds of natural resource protection. We can be a little bit more flexible. And then as a group, we got around, we had a discussion. One project idea that we're still working on developing those street corridors. But anyways, I just wanted to make the state committee aware that you're a member and that you have a say. And if there's ever a project idea that you want to do, what I do every year is I look at how do I use it to fund stuff that we're already funding. We already have projects. Sometimes there's loopholes. Sometimes there's things that we can't reach, or like I said, you want to target a certain area more, or I'll go back to the irrigation, that was just, the level of knowledge was not there, I think, at districts for writing irrigation water management plans. Jennifer had the CRF, and helped fund it, but to get districts trained, so we offered very intense 3-day training. Everybody took the training, got a nice manual on irrigation planning. And it's spearheaded, and then we had a round of funding for doing micro irrigation. I think we do pretty good now with the level of grants coming in. I still have, probably a couple emails a month from farms still looking. This program is still available. We've done it in the past for the grown and certified. We've had several rounds to help fund the farms who have identified as being safe and certified to implement projects on those farms. But anyway, so I think that was again that you just want to, we want to have a discussion. You're welcome to ask me any questions you want about it. But
20-some million and a lot into it. How is that decided to be broken up? Because it's a wide swath of the government that's involved in it. So how do you work that out?
So when it first started, the councilman radio, and I believe DEC got about half of it. And then the rest of us would submit proposals, and as a group it was decided on. Now, council has not met as often, but we write proposals and then we still submit them.
Competitive, so who does all the scoring?
They're not competitive on that part. I mean, they're competitive, I guess, because you only have that much of a pot of money and you gotta ask for it before everybody else does. So that's I think I submitted 3 times before, you know, I got picked up. That does happen, but I don't mind having, you know, a drawer full of ideas, and you could pull out again for that. So there is no formula for that.
That's great, thank you. Conservation districts historically have had a difficult time getting funding for non-element plans. I'm part of the Hudson and the St. Lawrence Watershed Coalition for Conservation Districts. Upper Hudson has applied a couple of times for DLS grants. We don't have limited enough water to get these non-element plans on the ground. The St. Lawrence just released their watershed revitalization plan. And we are now looking to fund a non-element plan, like you said, to open up the federal funding pot to get those projects moving. How can conservation districts apply for this? What would the process be? Would we go through the state committee?
For, without a plan, you're saying, or to get funding?
To get funding for a non-element.
So we don't offer, you know, funding for 9-element plans.
Okay.
Although, I mean, I could talk to partners and the BBC to say, you know, so we put money, is that a good use of funds? How much, you know, would you be looking for? You know, yeah. But that's exactly what I'm looking for. Is ideas.
Okay.
So I'm not promising that anything is coming in, but, you know, I will certainly follow up.
And I can certainly do a write-up for you with more details. Something that conservation districts also have a difficult time finding through, for example, WPIP grants, culverts, right-sizing culverts for resiliency, climate resiliency, flood mitigation. The Upper Hudson again has applied multiple times for DECW, and we just can't get culverts.
I think that project for you could be written up over to fit under that. So I think. So, and here's the other thing, too. I can't submit any proposals this year until we have a city budget. So you know, I have that one ready to go and I will. But again, these would be competitive. And, you know, before they always went through Grants Gateway and now they have to go through the SFS system. So I'll use this as my plug too to all the districts, get your goals set up. Don't wait till the last minute. I am working with districts to get your amendments. We don't have goals yet. It takes, if the system drops you or you're not in it, you're supposed to, you have to request access. It's at least 2 weeks.
Thanks, Katie.
Phase in.
Okay, what's the new system?
This is the state financial system.
Okay.
It'll be integrated, I think, from what I've seen, a lot of it is really similar.
I tell farmers, just if you don't get approved, tweak it and reapply. Don't give up.
You mentioned Lauren, things other than agriculture. And as you were talking before you mentioned that, I was wondering about, we've been talking a lot about agroforestry lately. And if that's one area, and then the other I was wondering about, I know NRCS in our county, when they come to the district board meeting, they talk about, you know, the urban conservation. And when you look at, when they describe that, they come outside of the city, a couple miles, I think, is where their boundary is, and they're doing high tunnels, I think, is one of the main things. But I wondered about that too. Are there 2 areas that?
Forestry, I don't know what happened last year. We did a forestry proposal, but I didn't do that.
Ended up getting close to forest and CRF program and more. There.
So there was been forestry in the past, you know, again, could do. High tunnels, I guess you would have to sell me on that because I know USDA.
Well, I'm just doing that.
But that's a good one though, because that's no big practice under this because, I mean, that is more economic. And you know,
Yeah.
But is there a problem with people getting? People who want high tunnels, they own. Because of the plants, it's always sounded to me like there was funding.
But I'm thinking other urban type, yeah, practices that.
That's, again, that's what I'm saying. It could be urban agriculture, or it could, it could be urban conservation.
A lot of times what we do is pilot initiatives and then we have them. It's good concepts to bring forward.
Yeah, and in the past, we have different things. I think AIM now allows for some implementation. We started with just doing small level of release of control projects. At first, they were $10,000 or less, and we raised it to $50,000 or $25,000 for grants. But that was really popular. People that have a little bit of flexibility get those small projects done, and they're awesome projects that give you when you're doing the field level concerns. They don't cost a lot of money, and they probably would not be as competitive as some. Okay, no, they're just like their size. So Greg put that into the AIM program, and then it's really tapered off on people who were requesting funding through BBM for it. So they already have the funding they need for that, so we just move on. And we'll look at it, like irrigation now. We're more involved in irrigation. That $10,000 or less, when the state first said, okay, we're going to allow you to do small grants using what they call a letter of agreement instead of a contract to expedite. So we started doing this, and then whether it was the level $10,000 was, we could just do a letter of agreement and there's benefits to that. Take half up front, half when we finish. And I would say that 90% of the projects close within 2 to 10 hours. I think maybe 1 or 2 amendments. It was a very efficient project. So drawback to the knowledge is benefit. So it does. It's also for administrative.
I think that you hand up a couple times.
I think it gets their attention. What would our needs be? So like NASA, like a high tunnel. Is there an environmental benefit? And I'm sure people would argue that there is, but you're providing healthy food to your community in a manner that holds the nutrients that you're using. I think there's environmental benefits somewhat to it, but it also extends your season. So there's huge economic benefits. And that's okay.
Just briefly mention proposals that we make. We see the nature of them. So how they form are they?
Right. I just do a one-page write-up. Starts with, how does this tie in with their watershed plans, the Great Lakes Action Agenda, or other 9 element plans. that they've helped develop. Lake Erie, we just did a single source one last year for Lake Erie because they were just finishing the 9-element plan. And we want to jumpstart and implement that. We've done ones too in the Genesee River watershed. We're working on one now, lost those, and we're hoping to get through on that. So I start off with linking it to the watershed plan, doing a general write-up. Then how much do you want? What are the future implementations and what are the goals that we hope to achieve from it? It's only like, the write-up is only like 1 or 2 pages. Nobody wants to read a whole lot down, you know, then when that moves forward, we can certainly develop a more comprehensive plan. Initially, we're just looking at 1 or 2 information. Right?
Yeah, so there may be, I mean, they are looking at existing 4 programs right now that, bond act eligibility are added to. My knowledge, there hasn't been any direct discussions about EBM or Oceans and Great Lakes programs, but, could be somewhere down.
Get find through our fiscal division that they mentioned for it. So, you'll submit it, there's not a date, there's not. You'll be able to review some budget passes. Oh, good. Yeah, that's it. So the irrigation, what we did too, that was micro irrigation. I just think that's great conservation practice. You control nutrients right through your irrigation system. That originally started with the FSMA, the Food Security Act came for help, safe handling of foods. And then there was the agricultural waters, that if the irrigation water does not touch the plant itself, then they're exempt from some of the regulations, is my understanding. I don't know if that's right, but micro irrigation is a lot safer for food products. So we started with that. Water conservation, using less water is important within the Great Lakes action agenda, so that allows us to implement that. Plus, it's a huge win for farms. But that being said, using less water, we did not fund water sources. So there was no wells involved. There was no sources. If you're applying to use less water, then you must have a system of water.
That's thoughts there on forestry and agroforestry. I would walk in the class, water class, symposium, and do discussions. Now have the forestry and agroforestry system, systems, which is accessible to all of our state and local programs. Certainly, we have a very special focus, pilot track and CRFP. Well, projects and events has to be part of days of CRF. could access that system just like they, we want them to. Yeah, well, and then I think that maybe an alternative, put in for that, you know, the funding can go to. Yeah, options are good, right? Yeah.
We started like that too. We started last year. Need to meet this year.
Well, I don't know if it's payment. It was pointing out that we have, now that we've organized it, we're no longer strapping for us to work within other systems. We have a lot, it's there for use in all of our programs based on sizes.
Might not be a bad idea though, because if I remember, we were talking about that before, that particular idea had a training component in it to get districts involved in more forestry training and up to speed, being that this is, but at the time, it was going to be like that whole day, we're trying to all the forestry practices, so, you know, that might not be a bad thing. That standpoint to be able to provide them with training to districts on that topic.
Well, I assume we wouldn't necessarily have to be a farm to keep funding through the.
I mean, like I said in the past. A market, they. No, forward.
That's what I'm thinking, that's why you add a little more flexibility.
Right, tying it back to the 9-element plan or some level of watershed plan that has those priorities identified, you know, helps them, you know, for programs and district services to focus in on agriculture, while there's also opportunities to focus in other areas. You don't address all areas within the plan, you know, not going to succeed. So that's good reason to kind of think broad, you know, where we
And so, when you're applying for funding, can it be a group instead of an individual? And I'm thinking maybe like, if there's community garden, possibly, if someone wanted to.
Is there any way to write the RFP? Once we get the funding, so right now we're talking about, you know, how do we get the funding to state committee or a market? And then I write RFPs that go out, and that could be for, usually, just because we have everything in place to contract with stormwater districts. Well, usually go through them, they represent those others, but you're right, we could do it as individual or way the RFP. But that becomes something, you know, conversations we have to have with legal, say, you know, what would we need? Make it a state with the contract they would have to sign. But, you know, so I'll say, leave it at, the state committee should, you know, discuss what level of involvement do you want. You know, we want to, I mean, we could, I would be more than happy to say, you know, every January we'll get together and have a meeting and put together a list of projects. And then the state committee could weigh in on which one of those, prioritize them in the order. You could do that. How do you, I mean, you know, Matt, in the past, I've always tagged you as a reviewer of the contracts, and we usually have somebody who's from state committee staff help review and rank competitive contracts or proposals. Get a say in that, but if it becomes a state committee project, we feel like I have one, so the list comes to you to approve. And the RFP. But you want to review another, or, you know, I'll leave it up to you on how involved is the state committee.
So if the state committee were involved, then with the draft RFP and or then kind of go through the technical advisory committee first. Or, uh,
That's your chosen path for those.
do you think that makes sense? I mean, I think it does, but maybe not.
Yes, yes. I mean, again, these are usually initiatives, pilot projects. So. Yeah, I just, I always have a little bit of, they're not big awards, right? Because we never have a lot of money, they're never big awards, so. Does the technical advisory committee, do you want to be invested in these small grants? So that's what it's about. Like to see the applications and the projects match the size of the award. We don't want to, develop a huge RFP for something that's going to pay $25,000. So, is that worth technical advisory investing their time?
Well, I think now that we have the state programs advisory committee, up and sort of running, I think that's another platform that we should consider using to at least collect ideas, especially from soil and water districts, if we want to continue, if they're going to be our continued, applicant through this program. I think that so far has worked out pretty well to really engage with districts on, it's been more focused on RFP development the past couple meetings, but to collect those ideas, I think that would be awesome.
I mean, I wouldn't want to add steps that are gonna slow the process down. But just ways for, I guess, the committee to have a better idea of what's going on before it gets here to the meeting.
I come every month and update you on how. It takes over a year to get an RFP out. So I will propose, just to give you an idea, I will put out that even a small grant program will take a solid year before you're to go from that idea stage, getting the funding, getting the permission to spend the funding, developing the RFP, getting it approved through all the channels. Fast process.
But state EDA program, small grant funding is, you can get a long way, helping small grant funding.
Yeah, I think small grants, I mean, that's my personal opinion, small grants and a little bit of flexibility. Sometimes if you set too many parameters, really. If there's been projects I put out there, when we first started doing soil health, here's an example. This is going back to, I think it was 2013, we funded initiatives, and I gave very little information. At that point, I was like, you tell me what you think program. And I'm willing to steal ideas from anybody. Often, they were all over the board, and there was great ideas. Some people, chose the traditional route of just, implementing, soil health practices. Other ones just said, I'm going to do soil health testing on every farm I can get involved, and we'll use that as an education piece to convince others.
Listen to yourself.
That came from that, yeah, from those sorts of things. So,
And please review the type of projects that have been funded and if you can recall the dollar amount associated.
oh, well. There's a few of the more recent ones, way back when it first started. There were two focus areas, pilot areas, and one was the Sandy Creek watershed in Jefferson County, and the other one was the Great South Bay. The watershed and Long Island only had 1 or 2 farms in it, so we kind of set the But we did 3 different pilot runs in Santa Cruz. Because again, they work with big groups of people to develop a plan. And I personally feel, you know, we have some obligation to then help them implement that plan. The developed plans have to sit on the shelf. So the last one we did, we combined 3 totally different things. We did soil health, we did cover cropping in that, stream, buffer management, and then we did, trail maintenance. So for recreation, cultural plateau, trails are so important, so we funded. But those there are just a variety of some of the ones, so the amount of money, like the erosion sediment control, the density and finger rates. One thing I got fully funded in that, I think. The initial one, in the just Genesee River, I had 2 years of funding, and that was $400,000. Second one, and then it was 700,000. And sometimes this is what happens, is I will put in more than one proposal, and they'll say, we're giving you this much money, and you decide. So, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking, how much should I ask for, but then, you know, how much did we actually get? Irrigation, I believe, was $750,000. The Soil Health Alliance in Western New York was $100,000. The Roman Certified, we did 1.5 million the first 2 rounds, and then the second round was $100,000. Those projects. And those are, you know, for Indiana, for Great Lakes, the great projects, the districts, all along different areas that really participate. Lake Erie is, there was some funding left over from different programs, so we didn't actually get funding for that, but funds that will return, but like from one source, because we don't have multiple rounds, we can't just roll it into the next round, so we straight it up and then everyone will have project funding. So Lake Erie's got 500,000, I believe. The heightened guidelines that we developed for HOPS, and that wasn't even our division, that was plant industries had a proposal that they were looking for funding and they wanted to get funding for it. So we picked that one up, and that was only like 60 or 70,000. And then training events will vary from the beginnings. Like we've done our own training events, and then we've also had BBC pass through the MOU, pass money through to us to do training events. That's very.
Go parties.
I'm not 100%. They do have Great Lakes divided into 4 regions. So within each of those regions, they're very active. They're developing plans. They're participating in forming the groups for many of the 9 element plans. They have an education network that they've developed. Part of it. If you go online to the beach website, they see all the numbers for the project. They do a lot of monitoring. I would imagine some of the EM or the ocean bridges, one of those towards the Finger Lake. I don't know why not. I don't even know the answer. That funding matrix. That's one of mine. Yeah. They got rid of them. Yeah.
Any other questions for anyone?
Right, well, it's still up there, but it's, Stephanie can add it in minutes or something, if anybody has ideas and want to send it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
We'll break for lunch. Let's say half hour, 20 after 12 or 12:30, we'll start again. Everyone, yeah, and go ahead and continue eating. If you want more, please, a lot more up here. And, we don't think it all back. Scott's next.
Hi, everyone. So from time to time, you hear me mention the PrEP program. Around October, November, I start mentioning that we're preparing to write the annual PrEP progress report, which does happen every year. And this month, I think it was last week or so, Stephanie asked if I could come and update the group as to what the PrEP program was, what our PrEP treatment is, just to highlight some other interesting facets of the program. So that's what I'm going to do today. Here's an outline of the program, kind of what I just said. You can see I have amazing formatting skills. Some of the last year, I can say that since 2020, our reporting format has changed. I used to write part of this reports that we would format and develop quickly, how they read. In the last 4 or 5 years, it's now an online data entry thing that I just have to do. Very formatted. A lot of the reports have changed, so that's what I'm going to be showing today. The kinds of things that you can track from their new report. And then, as a part of the report, we talk about success stories. And that's really the cool part of the report each year. There's a lot of great pictures of each one. Incidentally, there's a PrEP folder in there. If you ever want to go look at some of the old reports, everything's in there. Part of the report is the success stories. And although there are a lot of them in there that are very local district-based success stories, I'm going to focus today on the Chesapeake Bay incentive pilot program that's been going on now for several years as an overarching success story. So let's get right into it. PrEP is a USDA program. So let's get that going on. FSA is the administrator of the program, and NCS is the technical lead. And through our agreement, Mega Markets, the committee, really soil and water conservation districts have an active role of trying to introduce farms into the program. And it's just another among a pretty wide menu of programs that farmers can get involved in order to reduce that nutrient sediment transported from their operations into nearby streams. It focuses on the land adjacent to water bodies. So if you think about it from an ecological perspective, that's dealing with land at all sorts of scales. Whether it's around a lake, what happens around the rim of the lake is very important to the water quality of the lake. Whether it's development on the Chesapeake Bay itself, what happens on those shorelines impacts that water body. And similarly, with farming operations on streams, lakes, wetlands, there's a recognition that the land directly adjacent to the water body has increased value, increased potential to reduce nitrogen phosphorus. So we focus on that in the program. What we try to do is get those areas covered in some sort of vegetative cover that meets the NRCS standard. So that's essentially PrEP in a very broad view. Oh, incidentally, it's the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, not to be confused with CRP, Conservation Reserve Program, which is statewide. Same practices, same everything except for some of the reimbursement are more favorable in PrEP. That's the enhanced part, and we get that benefit by providing 25% match, doing all this reporting. We'll get into that. So the benefits. Why would a farmer want to join the CREP program? So you can imagine a district technician in the field, they're doing a tier 2 assessment, maybe they're talking about the stream corridor, the things that they'd like to do there, they're at the part of the process, where they can say, well, this is what we would like to do, say it's access control with a buffer, but how are we going to pay for it? CREP can be one of 3 or 4 different programs that gets put out in front of the farmer as potential funding sources. So they get annual rental payments for the acres that they do. So the program is fairly unique, I think, to all the conservation programs that we deal with. None of our programs offer annual rental payments. These are 10 to 15 year terms, and that's a nice economic benefit for the farm, for the land. They also get cost sharing, similar to our program, for any practices that they want to install, fence, train crossings, waterings, planting annual grasses, whatever it may be. They also get a practice incentive payment for special practices. This is money that they're given, which is typically used to pay for the other side of the cost share, and they get a signing incentive payment, a SIP, and a SIP. And the SIP is just for signing the contract, will added cash incentive to get them enrolled in the program. Normally, the farmer is taking land, if not out of production, certainly no longer feasible by his animals, perhaps grazing, which is the more typical scenario, because we want to reimburse them in some way. Plus, as we say now, they are an ecosystem service for which they should be reimbursed. So this is how we do it. And the environmental benefits, of course, what we want to focus on. They're setting aside essentially less productive areas near the streams in wet areas that are not, good for crops. You don't get cows in there because they'd be up to their needs and blood and whatnot. So we're restricting livestock access to these, which improves water quality. Anybody who's on the buffer tour we took a few years ago, where we looked at access control projects and what happens in between those fences. Once you get the cows out, it's amazing. They grow up into all sorts of wonderful pollinator habitat, increases biodiversity because of plant species. And in this program, although it's not well utilized, you can use CREP around public drinking water sources, zones of influence for public health. So the program funds certain kinds of practices. Like we fund certain types of systems that have BMPs that are components to those systems. CREP works in a similar way. And I didn't label the slide with all their nomenclature. We've seen things like CP22, CP1, CP3, on and on. This is what they actually do. What we see a lot of in New York is grasslands, CP1, and CP22, which is the forested riparian buffer. And although these other ones are all available in the reporting, at least when they used to report it by practice, you never saw a lot of that. It's mostly grasslands. These days, when we're working on it, we just get a lump sum acre. So many acres under contract, but they no longer tell us what practice they have. We're kind of in the dark on that these days. But we're trying to refine that work with Paul Angelo, who's the new FSA. State person, everyone is wonderful. Couldn't be here today. List of things to choose from when we talk to them. Now, everybody agrees that having more programs, leveraging federal dollars, is more for the benefit of us and to the farm. So years ago, prior to my arrival on the scene, I think honestly it was like maybe 1996, for some reason comes to mind. The parties came together in New York and wrote up and signed on to New York State CREP agreement. The parties that are involved are USDA, we call it the CCC, Conservation Credit Corporation, and I'm showing you FSA and FCS, and the whole that I mentioned, and the state committee. We'll sign on to that agreement. The current agreement was signed in 2016, the one we're working on. And this was updated in order to incorporate the Chesapeake Bay Incentive Program for the office. The agreement lays out the eligible watersheds, which is interesting. I think I know the story well. Right, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe, in New York State, DEC has something called the priority water bodies list. These are water bodies that have been anticipated in some cases to be impacted or to be stressed. And in some cases, they know the source of the pollutants, whether it's nitrogen, phosphorus, pathogens, whatnot. Well, agriculture sometimes would be named there as a source or suspected source. I think back in the day, they took a kind of a survey of all the PWLs that had that condition, where agriculture was called out. And then that 12-digit hub that segment was located in became an eligible water. So the agreement lays them all out on an 8-digit hub scale, fairly large. I got a map coming up here to take a look at, but essentially covers large swaths of the state. One thing I'll mention, although it's not in the report, the state CREP agreement is one of 3 agreements that exist in New York State. The New York City watershed has its own CREP agreement that they manage for the city watershed, as does the Skinny Atlas Lake watershed have their own. Because that's the water source for. So, the agreement lays out the goals, which we're going to go through in some detail in a few more slides. Lays out the federal and state legislative authorities, like what gives you the power to be in this agreement. It's all laid out there. All the laws are referenced. Generally, I don't get into that too much, except that it's there. It describes the program elements, the practices that we just reviewed. Also describes the rules, which I think I mentioned, but let me just quickly go through them again. FSA's role is administrative, and they are the agency that determines whether or not the land you want to enroll is eligible. They are the red light, green light people. You have a practice, you bring your FSA service center representative out there, and they'll say whether or not this farm or the land that you want to enter into CREP is eligible. The role of the technical service provider is NRCS, then they would refer that farm to NRCS, who would come up with a conservation plan that would include a planting plan or whatever would be appropriate for the practices that the farm and the technician in the field. So those are the 2 main players, NRCS and FSA. What they really rely on state committee for the districts are to introduce farmers into this. That's really their role. As time has gone by, and abilities in different service centers vary, interest varies. Districts almost across the board have stepped up to fill any gap that they need. Sometimes the NRCS is not entirely keen on this because they don't see it as one of their programs. They don't necessarily have the credit for it. So it's not a high priority, but it is for the farmer, it is for the district, so the district can play that role. That's something we would put ourselves behind the coach districts. The agreement also describes the commitments. Who's going to do what in terms of financing, and it describes, as of 2016, the Chesapeake Bay program, which I'm going to get into. An element of the agreement, as I mentioned, is the report. That's really, as the CREP coordinator for New York State, this is like 80% of what I do is prepare this report. We've gotten it down, now we're used to the online data entry sort of thing. Gotten it down so it's pretty efficient, and we can generate a nice report. Also, I think in line with that online data entry approach, that generates a report that actually gets sent to Congress. Whether or not they read it, who knows? Maybe it's staff people, but I definitely get the impression now that the reports are being read. Before I didn't have that impression whatsoever. So that's a positive. So the report is nice, even though it's sort of formulated, not a lot of room for expression. It describes the level of participation, the results of monitoring efforts. So if anybody knows, work with riparian buffers before monitoring is key. The report summarizes all the expenditures, both on the federal side, on the state side. On the state side, we have a real nifty way of meeting our requirements. They asked for success stories and recommendations on how to improve the program. That's a lengthy session for us. And status of how are we going? How are we meeting our goals? Every year they ask us to account for our goals. And I laid it out here. Nitrogen sediment, miles of stream, how many acres of open surface water are we adjacent to? Some of these are doable. They all are problematic in a sense. Some of them are not doable in our current framework, and others, like the protecting source water, there's just no contract, so we really can't report on that. I don't think it's well understood how PrEP could be used on private license, so it really doesn't get brought up. Yes,
New York City and yeah, have their own applications. They also generate new reports. Is there something to review?
Yeah, I've requested them in the past. New York City's is just table after table after table. Just have to get into it. Mark Berger is beefing up his efforts because USDA is in fact more engaged these days and wants to see better reports, making sure that they are reporting in a a measurable way on some of these achievements. So they've been working with us, notably Tyler, to run their BMP implementation through the CAST system so that they can report on estimated reductions. But they're all available, and if anybody wants them, they can definitely have them. Okay. So here's the map. Most of the state, again, they'll read it, but they're doing something 22 8-digit hubs that all the eligible watersheds. The breaks down to a great list of 12-digit hubs. We will be the New York City watershed for the most part. Adirondacks, not that long up there in terms of opportunity. They call it town waters. I'm not sure why it's not involved, but apparently they have pretty good water. Water quality has been giving us too short, too small to show up. But you can see the majority of the state. It's definitely where agriculture is taking place. So we have really good coverage. It might be strange going forward now that the PWL doesn't reference agriculture. And so, level of participation. So I've got some numbers and forces up here that are reflective of the 2023 fiscal year. Active contracts in 2023 were 504 contracts currently open across the state. That's down from 783 in 2020. Overall, just for context in the rest of the presentation, the program is in a lot of ways declining, but in some important ways improving. The program is relatively small. I want to say, depending on how you add up the numbers, we'll get into the federal expenditures, only 3 or 4. About what we spend on one grant on one farm, this program does for the whole year across the state. So, just so it's not a giant piece of but acres under about 6,000 acres under active contract. If you tally up all the acres that have ever been enrolled since the beginning, because the contracts expire and the land goes out, we're about 24,000 acres since the beginning. But we can't keep a tally on expiring contracts, re-enrollments, and the like. So these are the third quotes. New acres in 2023, 189. That's a good number. For what are mostly preparing for. So that's a nice, enrollments come and go with the enrollment of 10 or 15 years prior. Those contracts are going to expire. If they didn't have, just like we have ways of closeouts, they have expiration this year, last year was not. Right, but you can look at the trend. The models are just plotted with 2020 and 2023. We can see the number of acres increasing every year for the past 4 years. So that's, in a sense, I think, a positive. Even though we're not where we were with 4 acres. Part of that is back in 2020, there was a lot of things happening where there was no acre. They met the cap nationwide. They put a pause on the program, all these sorts of things. But we really, and that actually was quite a challenge because this, like a lot of things, either it's got momentum or it's got inertia. If it's going by itself, you got to push. And this is a pusher. You have to push this program. If people with confidence stop, people stop. It's hard to get it on again. But we have it, and it's been pretty successful in that regard. So here are the expenditures, and I'd like to just take a little bit of time to describe how we come up with our match. It's quite clever, and it helps us out immensely. So we are on the hook for 20% of all the federal expenditures every year that take place for the PrEP program. But within the language of our agreement, it describes complementary practices that also get done through our programs in the eligible watershed. So any practice that we implement that reduces nitrogen, reduces phosphorus or sediment, all counts. And that for us is ag non-point source. So what we do is, or I should say what Tyler now does, Jason had done in the past, is look at a particular round, that in this case, round 29, what got contracted in that year, and then essentially putting the cookie cutter of the eligible watersheds right over it and extracting the dollar amounts that the state paid, what the practices were, the units, et cetera, et cetera. So because we're able to do that, we never, ever have a problem with our match. We don't pay for 20% of each project. We match it by the program as a whole. And so for 2023, we spent $150,000. You could make that a higher number if you add in the signings of the payments, but I was trying to limit it to practices, where we put in $7 million. Okay, so we're obviously way over our 20% requirement. And it's always been like that. I looked at the old report, I graphed it. Our bar is way up here and you can barely see. So most of the achievements in terms of reductions, most of the investment in terms of money is actually coming from our bar. You see some of the federal programs, expenditures over time, with the 2023. It said in the PIP payments, these are incentive cash payments, which is the legal form that we use it to pay for the practices. And, it's up, let's just say, from 2020, but that wasn't very long. And cost share payments, I think, are more of a better reflection of practices hitting the ground. They get paid off on the cost of the practice when it's signed off on. It's like a true reflection of work aside from the incentive. Last year was not huge implementation year for the program. There, which is what I'm focused on. So some of the goals. Annual phosphorus, nitrogen, and sediment goals. There's a lot that I'm going to say about these because the way the goals were determined in the first place is unclear at least to me. And then the way we calculate our estimates may be entirely different. And so I'm not entirely confident in the whole thing. But you have to report, like I said, with Jason and Tyler's help, we run the numbers through the CAST model. People might be familiar with those, what do you call it, a multiplier. Correlation value associated with the practice and the units, and the estimate, just add them all. So, our goal for phosphorus was 36 tons of reduction, and we reduced 3 tons. Nitrogen 20 tons, we reduced 21.5. So we look at second, our goal is actually that's not. I want to say that's 56. I apologize. That's 56. It's roughly it. And something I think that Tyler and I have kind of flagged to investigate a little bit is the CAST model itself has evolved as the years have gone by. And I think in this past year, the latest version pumped out numbers that were wildly off from the previous years, even though the practices were generally the same. So there was some significant change in the model that made those numbers look funny. We went back to the model that was previously used in the other reporting just for consistency, but something that Tyler and I picked out, something that needs to be looked at. In addition to, I think, the goals themselves to make sure that they line up with how we estimate the reductions, so that we're all at least closely on the same page. And this.
So FSA or USDA at the federal level hasn't given states a method to use yet. So define your method and enter the number.
They ask us, and then they ask us to describe our method, and then we're arriving at that, which I get from the definition. CAST, by the way, is Chesapeake Assessment Scenario.
That's a more descriptive name than its actual name.
Oh, that's good.
It's what everybody uses for the Chesapeake Bay watershed.
I think it's become a standard. Most folks refer to it. So, but it's not as easy as just changing our goals. You have to open up the agreement, and that is another case. There are other goals in the agreement beyond just the reduction goals, for example. One of them is protecting about 4,500 stream miles. I typically don't report on this because none of our data is reported in miles. Buffers are reported in acres, and they vary in dimension. So how much of it is along the stream, we don't necessarily know. We can take a good guess because we know that most buffers in New York are 35 feet in width. That's the minimum, and that's what people generally go for. So I think in our last interaction with USDA and looking at all the buffers, I think we had come up with a number of miles somewhere in the 500s. I think 507 miles pops up, but it's just a really back of the envelope kind of thing. And these results, this is what I write the report, they came back, and we did have, I think, Bethany and I, and from USDA, had a very nice conversation about how we can work better together and come up with some functional limits. This is where it goes. Protecting 473 square acres of surface area. I don't even know how to begin maybe if there's a credit project next to a Finger Lake, can we count the entire Finger Lake? I don't know. How they came up with their goals was a long time ago. It's hard to know what they had in mind when they came up with it, but in our suggestions portion of the report, every year for years, we've been saying these goals need to be evaluated. Some of them. agreements because nobody counts things in this way. And we really rely on the NRCS standards and the NRCS units in order to report. Last night I was going through this presentation one last time, and I made some changes after I sent it to the office for printing. And this monitoring activities is one that I definitely changed. So what's on the printed page is old information. This is the new information. Read this what's on the screen. Yeah. So NRCS with their technical assistance duties is also required to go out and do a percentage of monitoring on these contracts. So last year, they did like a call field status review on 648 acres of ground in 18 counties. 60 contracts that they hold, 9 different conservation plans. I thought those were really great numbers. Carl has also over the years come around to take NRCS's role in the program a little bit more seriously, and so they are in fact out in the field, but doing what they are required to do. We do have a great partner in the Upper Susquehanna Coalition. I'm sure everybody knows them. 16 or 20 solar districts in the Upper Sus and the Chemung watersheds. We're going to get into how they play a big role in CREP, but they share some of these responsibilities in terms of monitoring, making additional assessments, their buffer stewardship program that included treatment shrub survival and maintenance assessments. And if any of you are inclined to learn more about that, there are terrific analyses and reports that Linda Brinkley has done for USC that she shows pretty regularly at the buffer task force meetings that take place quarterly these days in Boone County. So if you're interested in riparian buffers, want to know what's going on around the state, it's an excellent meeting to make. This is the lengthy part of this. So prior to 2014, when I got hired, there was a New York State buffer that worked for a very long time that came up with the recommendations that resulted in the Chesapeake Bay pilot. We'll get about the history of that. But it was their recommendations were more than just added incentive payments, which is what the program essentially is. We've included those and built on that year to year. And included all of our comments in the report all the time. I have noticed that that section does not go to Congress. But some of the things that we talked about internally, districts and our USDA partners, why can't we get more? For $1 million, and we do something. We need to ensure the process. Having NRCS and FSA work together creates a lot of paperwork and bureaucracy and back and forth. And you need to have willing participants. You need people who work together and want to work together. That a lot of times can create impediments to going forward. There's only one person in charge of this entire program in Syracuse from FSA, and it's one of about 5 or 6 things that she does. So in terms of just eyes on program, hours working towards it, not enough. If it's going to be recommendation has come to simplify the program. Some of you remember Lori Dandiak, the prior. She used to carry around the rule book, literally 8 inches thick. This one's really important, and it's actually is training for FSA employees. It's really their program, and if they don't understand it or they're not confident in their understanding, they're not going to really get involved and be leading the charge to get more 8%. it's like anything else. You really need to know what you're doing before you can do it. And so, and that goes for NFF as well. So this year, they took that suggestion, and I think they're having 5 interagency training events. Hopefully, we'll also the email blast go out. Districts are invited to go, but they're going to be learning about it. We could be learning right alongside them. We want NRCS staff being able to sign off on as the, again, increased training to technical partners, which essentially is the district. More training, regular statewide trainings, clearer definitions of the roles, as not everybody in that three-way arrangement is up for or even understand what it is they're supposed to be doing. And we don't like to see an increased level of don't want to go out and be planting native grasses or forested buffers or whatever the plan is, and then just walk away and not go back until 10 or 15 years later when the contract expires and we just see what happens. We want people there. Right. This is the one I was just mentioning, updating the original goals, we've got a segment, but that makes sense for people who are working on the program. Right now, all of our reporting is determined by the Ag Non-Farm Source Program. None of the information we get from USDA can be fed into the CAS model because they don't tell us what practices. And so we can't count them in addition to our own reduction. So that's a we'd like to have a uniform monitoring approach. There was some in the details about cost share for herbicide applications. I think we fought that battle a couple of years ago. Suggested USDA raise caps for stream crossings. I think we got that one, actually. From my understanding and some recent experiences, NRCS reimbursement for stream crossing is now a lot better than it used to be. We wanted to increase rental rates. We would like them to support the hiring of local workers. We wanted decision-making authority to be brought down to the local level. Everything almost you run through them has to be brought up the chain, and it has to be brought back down. It would be a lot better if people on the ground, people who are familiar with the farm and the situation and circumstance, can make calls without having to go ask for permission. So, shifting to successfully part of the presentation will go which in my view is the Chesapeake Bay and Hills the section of our program. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, it came from this part of the task force report. It was generated in 2015. That had those kind of increases in incentives plus some of the other things. Just one thing. That's a link. I don't know if it's still available. But in the end, FSA wound up $1 million, and New York State wound up 200,000. Sorry, 20%. Requiring 20% match provided by PBC. It created something called we call what's also CBIT, not CBIT. And the SPIT, I'm sorry, I mean, I've done a long way to getting forward attention and getting those papers into the program. As we went through the years with USC and learned from our experiences, what was happening year to year, we amended our agreement with USC to include or identifying a few as necessary. So we went above and beyond what was written in our prep agreement to facilitate riparian buffers as much as we could in the Susquehanna. People should know in the Susquehanna, they're in the TMDL waterway, which is the Chesapeake Bay program. Next year is And buffers happen to be within the Bay model. You can implement or get reductions. So we really want to help them, give them the tools they need. Some of those things were an enhanced multiplier. We found out early on that our multiplier wasn't generous enough. We weren't convincing people to the incentive. And we also wanted to look at re-enrollments. We began to notice, or I should say Lydia began to notice that wave after wave of people who their contracts were expiring. And then all those acres get withdrawn from the Chesapeake Bay model. And so, what gets further away. So we wanted to provide them with funding. They could go out to a farm before the contract expired, assess the situation, and then put in whatever money needed and resources to get that buffer up to standard so that they could re-enroll more easily. And that was a great success. We also put in money for assessment, going to sites and assessing for buffers. We put in money for planning. They could now do planting plans, tier 3As that were focused on buffers. And then we also, like we did with the feds, we did with them, that we would fund complementary practices. So if a buffer was part of another system, typically a grazing system or an access control system, we would also pay for that. Those were all amendments through time. So just to narrow down to the actual incentive payments in the agreement, it's the CBID, which is the Chesapeake Bay signing incentive payment, $35 in paper times the number of years of the contract. Okay, and that was a one-time payment. When they signed the contract, USDA would give them a check. And then we have the SPIP, which was up to 200,000. And we had to use a matrix in order to calculate what that was going to be. So it's based on the size of the buffer, and it wouldn't be paid out until the NRCS came out and signed off on the buffer. And we were confident that everything was okay. Originally determined how much the SPIP was big, depending on the buffer width. We paid more for a wider buffer. We paid different amounts depending on prior land use. And we use a different multiplier going up. This is a solar rental rate, which NRCS determines per acre. So, for example, we did a 50-foot buffer on a crop home, and we would pay you 15 times the solar rental rate per acre. That got long over the business. It's super hard. So, people are giving really difficult. It's much easier, we get much more reception when you're talking to animal, livestock operations, where you're talking about access control, and you can put a buffer with the fence. With the cell, it's much easier. FSA and CREP is also, I think, got another advantage in addition to the annual rental rate, in that they will work with historical ag. The properties don't have to be farmed in the moment, but as long as FSA has some record of them being farmed in the past, they're eligible, which is, that's where a lot of acres come from, because they're dealing with non-farmers who don't have to make an economic calculation whether or not to participate. A lot of people who are non-farmers not even really so interested in the incentive. They just want you to come plant trees.
You know how the federal rental rate is determined and how often?
I think it's determined at the local level. Okay. So by county. Yeah. I wouldn't say the average, because we moved to an average after Lydia started making her budgets based on an average, was between like 38 and 40. I'd say, but it's got to do with soil type, maybe some other considerations, but I believe it's the county board, if I say that, puts their state. This was the funding mechanism in order to fund the Chesapeake Bay program. EPA was giving money to DEC for the Chesapeake Bay program. DEC would then forward the money onto Ag and Markets through our interagency MOU, which is a piece of paper that's worth its weight in gold. And because we had that MOU, we were able to accept that. It's broadly written to accommodate a lot of different things, which is great. And then we would simply pivot and write a contract to USC with the same exact deliverables as we had with DEC. And so it became like a seamless pipe. When USC would report to us with exactly what they have to do, it was exactly what we had to report to DEC. And we would simply pivot and provide that report over to DEC. That went on for 3 or 4 years probably. Not that they really needed an introduction to DEC. USC's been working with them for quite a while, but I'd like to think that we got the relationship and at least buffers up and running, got them to a standard where they were used to working. And these days, DEC is now with USC. The money no longer comes through our shop. I guess the jury's still out. How good that turned out to be. In fact, they haven't received funding since October of 2022 because of various delays and things I don't know. I'm going to put a pin in this one and look at that. The average I would advocate for that because
Yeah. We do charge very little indirect, but that indirect is also been instrumental in paying for trainings and outreach materials and other articles of things that people can find to get corporate.
the word for USC is that the OSC has approved their contract. So it's one step closer to being sent to them. But a wrinkle now is that EPA is targeting their funds to priority watersheds. So whereas in the past, USC held firm and the EPA accepted, I think it was one watershed, one priority. And then wrap things up. Now, something's changed and the money's being directed to sub-watersheds, and that's going to change how they do business because that's the money that they're getting.
For all of our
Within the Chesapeake. And they're running a different model, the Sparrow model, I think, or maybe it's overlaid with underserved communities like that. But it's less land, it's a lot less. And 85 is actually because of this. Yes, I think we'll probably a little over. Yeah.
They've wanted us to for years.
Fun.
Scott, did you mention that EPA has not funded the OSC since 2022?
DEC has been able to get the contract. They eventually let us decide. They got into negotiations to move one another and they added things. It's their capacity that they got a lot of money. And then it got tied up in USC, this woodshed, or eventual roads, and we'll have to sort it out with lawyers. Last I checked was just a couple of weeks ago. It's out of OSC and should be. And like I said, this is an inertia kind of thing. If you're not So what did USC do? Tomorrow is not. This is another slide that's not an airplane down. But in total, from the reports that I got, they paid $257,000 in the SPIP, which is more than what we had agreed to, but that included 38 contracts and accounted for 300 acres of new forested buffer. Had to be new, and it had to be forested riparian buffer in order to qualify. From the amended agreement, the things that we kind of tacked on over time, they also re-enrolled 134 acres. They developed 92 riparian buffer planting plans for almost 400 acres that are sitting on the USB shelves waiting to be implemented. They held over 50 outreach and training events on riparian buffers. Probably all been to a couple of few of them. And completed 27 projects with complementary practices. Those are usually grazing practices. So that's quite I think, a good set of deliverables for the 4 or 5 years that we managed. And as a pilot, I think we can all say that it's been a success. We set out to increase incentives with the goal of increasing enrollment, and that's exactly what's happened. So as a concept, we've proven it. This will work and can be employed in other work, given the willpower and the organizations that are wanting to do that, which is something I'm always excited to talk about. But that's one of the big success stories. The upper sauce and what they were able to do with that new provision within the just pay agreement. And so for next year, things to consider. Formula is being negotiated right now, and that determines a lot of what the federal programs will and won't do. We have our CREP program, which is a follow program. We have a program in time. This is something our second formula that we kind of stepped away from. In the past, we've tried to open up our agreement to say, amend our goals or do something. And the lawyers from USDA are always saying, well, if you do that, then you have to adopt all the provisions that are in the formula. To which I say no, because the CREP agreement is better than the formula. Farmers reimbursement is better than what we have. So yeah, we lose out on this or that, but the main financial incentives are better in our CREP. We'll see what happens. But that would be bad. So we're not going to do that. So maybe we can do. I'd like to continue the discussion on expanding the Chesapeake Bay pilot to other major watersheds that are, center of attention these days. One thing that I've engaged in with Nicole, the counterpart at FSA, is implementation of CREP is super spotty. You'll find like 4 or 5 service centers doing everything, and the other 25 doing nothing. So what we've started is visiting the service centers with a survey, 15 to 20 questions that we ask the partners in that service center to describe to us why it works in your office. How do you do CREP, and why are you successful? The secret sauce. We want to learn it, and we want to learn your circumstances. And the idea is to go to a number of those offices. We've done 2. We were thinking about 5. Nicole's been writing reports on each one. And then go to some of the other offices where CREP is not on the radar and ask them, like, why aren't there CREP projects in your service area? And learn from them what the issues may be. And then hopefully we can take from the lessons learned from the successful offices and apply them to the offices that are having difficulties. That's the idea. At the very least, it's generated a lot of excellent conversation into Delaware County and to Steuben County. And really had a good time with those folks, and they're both really successful at prep, but completely different, which is really interesting to learn. So we want to keep doing that. The other thing we want to continue doing in 2025 is promoting buffers through our other programs. Because perhaps not the only car in the garage, I'd say, there's other things. And better things, better programs in a lot of ways. We don't have a rental aid, we don't have some other things, but normally our programs are cleaner, streamlined. For Ag non-point source, we offer bonus points. So included in the application, CRF, track 2, track 4, all about planning. Pursuant to the buffer program, part and parcel of that is buffers. AEM, conservation practice, and as you just mentioned, individual agreements through EEC, MOU, or even programs. MOU, individual agreements, maybe with coalitions, or between checking the box for a new strategy. And also, I would add, one thing, using these in concert. Those buffers are long-term commitment. 15 years before you have a mature tree that you're to walk away from. You can implement one of these programs, you can do your monitoring and maintenance in AMU. And skip 2 years and then put it back in the main program. All sorts of different combinations make for a long-term care program. And that was it. Scott, how long were those state rental payments in the for 10 or 15 years? What agreement does SWCC have or that? I don't think so. I'm going to guess that NPUS would have to be I just wonder how they see those spots out for so long. Didn't even have a particular contract they got with something.
You said that's an upfront payment.
Signing payments up front from the USDA. USDA takes out on the sign off of the buffer. So once the buffer's implemented, NRCS says it meets the standard, then they get the check, which is usually right at the beginning of the contract. Maybe a couple of years into the contract. Okay.
Topography of the watershed is going to make a massive difference in participation. Topography from the Genesee River watershed compared to the south of Susquehanna is massively different. You have an awful lot of very large ag down the Genesee River that participate because they want to work out the places they can. Where you don't have that in Susquehanna or of course the southern counties that are more heavy.
Yeah, like 100% right. And that shows up in the breakdown of the types of farms that are engaged, because they're almost none of them are cash crop farms, or even large farms where we're asking for corn taking out of production. Almost never happens. Yeah. There are almost always beef operations, where there's some other, there's fence involved, there's crossings involved, or something like that. And they get the buffer.
This is available to properties that farmed in the past. Do they have to be farmers, like actual farms, so like a private landowner in Exeter, with a lot of land?
Yes, somebody who purchases what used to be a farm. They go to their FSA office and say, I go to the milk farm. As long as the milk farm is in the FSA records, it's having once been farmed. I guess a lot of people have been signed up with FSA for a long time, so they have a extensive record. They all would be eligible. It is great. Yeah. I remember when Lori rolled that out, she's like, well, we don't tell everybody because we don't have enough staff to take on what would probably be a tidal wave of applications. Let's just go.
They look back 50 years ago. It was a long time. so good, but they had to go back 50 years.
I want to say any sizable clearing used to be a farm, central New York. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a tree.
So that like 50 plus years, maybe 80 or 100.
Have you or maybe through the video of buffer task force incidents for various buffers that have fallen out of the room and not been available?
I think there was a time where regeneration was a concept, that if you left it alone, things would grow. I don't know if that actually was the case. A lot of, especially in Chenango County, which used to be the leader in rent contracts, was also the leader in expirations, because that regeneration never actually, and they didn't want to or didn't take the step to replan. I don't know if they will be what the status of them is, but it's a good question.
So they would have likely been enrolled if the buffer had taken off and the contract and that kind of stuff.
Exactly. There's no compliance at that point. Right. And then a lot of the work has to be done with them back and forth. And then subsequently.
Yeah, wasn't that something they had 390 probation stuff or did that? Be involved wasn't possible because now it's just a standard now.
It's got trees on it. And, but they didn't want to be in the business of cutting down trees to maintain a grass, so there was a weird middle ground.
Yeah.
But people were getting kicked out of the program, having beneficial things. It was strange.
Yeah.
That's where, okay, sorry. Local decision level. That's a decision level that's made in another state, in Washington, D.C. No, that doesn't make sense. We can't do that. But for the person on the ground, right there, it makes perfect sense. That's a real level.
Do you have a sense of how interested USDA would be in expanding this? And as you move out of, let's say, the Susquehanna watershed, the level of incentive payment, think about the Finger Lakes. So that incentive payment to get to this point would have to be massive to make anybody make a decision. And PJ and I have been in meeting for a bit, farmers not want to get more buffers, but
Yeah, the land values and that kind of profits they pull for that land is going to be determine all the decision making. Nicole has come to me and asked if she thought that we could go to another watershed, and asked how this came to be, so maybe it could be replicated. And, I know there was the task force and there was the report, but I want to say there was also a story about two top people being stuck in a room together for a while, whether it was for weather or something, and when they emerged, they had this all hammered out. They called it the chiefs. There's the two chiefs there. And then we all had some. Yeah, right.
Have we found with Champlain? Was the Champlain on the list of things that places to try? For a crop? Yeah. I mean, they're listed for everyone.
Have so many trees.
Any more comments? We'll wrap it up.
Maybe for the thing like so it's here, what the lands that have been preparing for buffers, right, and the landowners and kind of farmers make sense. We wonder about, I know this has been tried, but it's something not sticking, but we need to do that for 35 buffers on people in farm to help.
I don't know if you could get, they don't know. Western Europe, very so it would take a lot of things.
So those ones. Other scenarios could be as before you're incorporating. Really well, we're involved with a big buffer to get paid for it.
Hills are less than 100 feet from waterway, just P index alone, P index, it's gotta be awful hard for those fields to even get anywhere without vegetated buffer or action injection. Because those fields are gonna rank so high.
It's injection, like bumping on the budget.
Maybe something will start bringing up at the first meetings. So that's.
And then remember, watersheds, you know, we wonder about special reach, you know, it's a big deal for us. Everyone.
Yeah, for relations, that's
Yeah.
right.
You know, it's
Puerto Rico gets them, they comes out from their neighbors.
something like that.
Yeah, they do see signage on some of the finger lakes on the ditches where they're putting this in as a buffer for, those huge farm fields, not all conservation.
And provide sequence that's all for quarter acre. You know?
They do have, they
Months.
do have unmet demand. Let's see, guys. But there are people out there seeking stuff, can't get from. They're not those people. Usually the non-angling, it's a much more attractive thing.
Thank you, Scott. Very good.
You're welcome.
Advisory reports.
What's going on, glad you preparing for our annual meeting coming up in October, we'll be back in the end. Everybody has any ideas for, session, breakout sessions? On the, listen, take notes.
Well, maybe if we have some back.
I'll check. A few things maybe I'll respond. May 1st continues to be the deadline for 18 Tier 4 project packages, and some of the administrators are appreciated for districts as well for putting those forward. May 15th continues to be deadline for applications, and I'm pretty excited. It seems like there's districts from all over the state that are interested in engaging. They were for a long time and submitting good stories to tell. So thanks to the districts for reaching out, and the farmers for being open to that. I've been asked to do and delivering several presentations about AIM's programs, sometimes focused on things like upcoming ones, like CRF8, at several intercrop meetings, either sponsored by folks like Jefferson County and Lewis County Soil Water Districts, and Whiteman, or local extension area field crop teams, or things like that, or their winter crop meetings, or Western New York crop management and private sector company that are 300 farmers in the room to hear about things that districts do and program opportunities. And it's really good to see those organizations and farmers all thinking about it and participating. Also, some pro dairy professional engineer training and farmer webinars, and recently I heard Health and Nutrition Conference. And next week we'll partner with Molly Hicks, Assistant Commissioner in our department, on AIM and its programs in her monthly outreach webinar to anybody who's interested. It's a great new effort of the last year or so. Just to say, hey, we're going to scroll through everything that's done here, make it available at a time that's usually like after work for people to participate in and call in about the department. And so to hear a little bit about what the state committee and associated partners do. And looking forward to the conservation skills workshop plan coming up here hot. So. Yeah. It's a ball way. Yeah, road area training, sales workshop. Oh, wait, North American Manure Expo.
Oh, no, don't you miss it?
Yeah, July 17th and 18th to sign up.
Where's that?
It's in Auburn, outside.
Patterson Farms.
Yeah.
Patterson's, okay.
We will leave that to Brendan. He's been our point person primarily on working with that.
Region 5, districts are in the middle of the tree and trout season. No-till drills will be fired up pretty quick here. A lot of interest in those. Other than that, a lot of AEM paperwork, grant closeouts, usual spring stuff, I guess. Keeping us all pretty busy. Mentioned it 3-4 weeks ago, the state rates for 2024, 2025 went out. So all the rate, that's based on our rate that the districts submitted to me as part of the annual report. All rates went up. All tax, senior tax, managers, clerks, all went up by $4 an hour. Engineers went up. Shows that districts are definitely getting those salary and benefits packages up, which is great to see. So we'll have to see if that those rates will be used going forward. I think are they going to be in they're going to be in the CRFP going out here shortly. So that'll be good.
Same as Ben, the districts are really gearing up for their tree and shrub sales and spring fish sales and things like that. For me, a lot of board trainings, a lot of closeouts, we just work with the districts on some AEM 18 tier 4 stuff. So those are coming in and hopefully those all be done deadline. And Mr. Finger Lakes is still moving forward, which is good. And we're now business as usual.
Everyone should gear up for round 8. All I had.
8 is great.
8 is great.
Region 3 is smaller goal. A lot of closeouts and everything. Something that Vic and I got going on is giving the district capacity building and one of the districts. This is what we do. Give it to you, whatever necessary, like the open. Really laying out the case for the district to staff up, do that, to do the training instead, on staff, and to try to the best of their ability, for additional staff on the rationale for doing so. Been well received over
Real-life learning program has a lot of things and I'm just looking to make programs work smoothly and to engage with districts, like know how to make the program better now that I'm doing these. Looking forward to feedback.
And Jason, just for familiarity's sake for everybody, the program should be playing point on.
I will be managing currently an ag non-point source for the K-12 and source water buffer and
yeah, start off with let's see,
yeah. In that same vein, we put on, the first one being, basically was a nutrient management thing that end on the farm, sources of providing and come from where we're going, take the stock of them with those. 60 people in that class. So that was the one and then that was called our AM 3A showing time. It's where you get the opportunity as a district person or a private person bring out the plans that you're working on, show them your peers, talk about them. Brian and I actually part of that. And it was a really good. Class would be so
really good. Greg, was a part of some forestry classes for that. So it was a really good future, things that we have. American U.S. and there is, as part of the planning committee, state demonstrations and equipment demonstrations, and this is a national event that NXV puts on, and it really gets along with people working out and doing lots of myself and part of a soil health and root management and discussion with research practices for soil health. Also doing some so that's what's coming up. This year.
And then which we have a sort of general, conservation partnership table. We busy times, we don't really know. There's an opportunity for AIM, CBA, adjacent to extension, I'm sure, then you have your own there, but, okay. Cool, you do that.
Something's happening. I don't know.
I tried to do it that,
Yeah, that's kind of my understanding as well.
that's not new though, right?
Right.
Okay, good. And Caitlin, same to you?
Yes.
Perfect, okay, good.
You guys here today, let's go. So we have a couple of high profile projects going on right now, kind of doing beginning to end. We're still planning on that for the summer, but we wanted to have a little bit more time with that this season. Information, but just a quick update here. The last couple of years, we've had a lot of folks retiring. Just the natural course here, we're putting on 50 certified planners. With those retirements, we've also proved that we have a strong effort to keep building and servicing this planners. So we currently 53 planners, and that's roughly 18 of those individuals, so about 15 to 16. So building those things up, we have 7 planners currently going through the 300 process. There's more of those districts that we're looking at the private sector. Really good folks there that we think do it. And the exciting part that we saw through the water party people in the last couple of years is it's not already it's FPS and other kind of they have a great spot. That's really building up their experience. So we're really excited for the certified tax advisors to get those certifications and service the farms in their areas, as well as taking the next step to become certified farmers. So there's probably 4 to 6 books that are ready to start submitting plans here this summer or late fall. So we're really excited about that. With that being said, like I mentioned, we'll hopefully do a good planning department update as well. We're going to see another different moving parts and to the planning project, but also people.
This is just on the logistic, share a little bit, but I would say that there's an issue that I brought up last year and it continues to be a problem, and that is the ability to be able to increase staff to cover all these wonderful, great, and super projects that vendors that we could bring to our county. But our staffing number doesn't allow it, and our office capacity doesn't allow it. And we have restrictions to how we can acquire that space and do whatever. We've been working at it, we're going to stop. I thank him very much for all the feedback. But it continues to be an issue, and I understand it's an issue across the state. But, it's great to be able to bring these programs to our community, and we'd love to do that, but we've got to have the staff and the train people to do that. But we'd love to do it. So we have to, look into the current problem, which is getting that office capacity and to be able to still afford the staff.
Linda, you were saying you're growing out of your.
Yes, yeah, and, you know, we're currently under certain agreements with USDA, we're still housed with them.
Yeah.
So, you're on there, the, offices are very interesting, and what they paid for those leasing, that should they pull out, we certainly couldn't afford to maintain that. So it's certainly, contract, that leasing contract was up in a couple of 2 years ago. And nobody can give us any direct answers to what the future holds. So we are now on board level trying to determine what are all of our options to look into the future. Because we could find ourselves in another year with no office space.
I know a handful of districts over the last 5-10 years have had to make those hard decisions and move out of service centers and into the.
No.
Sure. You don't think about it like for a training topic, or more like a roundtable.
Yeah.
What leads to, like, what are the things to consider making that? That's a huge.
Other than the rent type of thing, you know, if we would be, kind of handicapped us during COVID, when everything is shut down and we can't be in there, we just don't to do our own computer system, our own
Right.
security
So you've
system.
already made those steps.
They've been doing those steps to kind of, make us more, independent. But the biggest issue is the office space itself.
Complaints, from a spending perspective, kind of ramping up our winter meeting season on ad topics, last week of, March there, have a player workshop, and being very, a few folks. And the room got to attend, we had about 25 people, I don't know, I think up to 30, I don't know how many of them come to your place. Yeah, but there was one out there too. And then, at least on a local level, we'll be shifting our focus to the Manure Expo. And no, people from all around North America are not bringing their manure with them.
You don't need to bring your own sample.
And I also have some, updates, from Kales, Brian Rom and Andrew Ford has been here today. So, there'll be, summer regional field days around soil health that they're putting the schedule together for. There was a meeting with, some folks from the state and some farmers. I was involved with, Dean Olin on, what are some of the research needs to meet, the goal of having, our dairy farms be net zero by 2050. And for those of you that don't know, Dean, Holden's third year now, third or fourth year, his background academically, environmental sustainability, greenhouse gas, issues. The methane respirator chambers are gonna be opening on Thursday. I think these are the ones that are gonna measure the methane for cows. And we'll get, from a chronicle for you. And then, the last thing is that, we'll be working, SWCC will be working with DC to, update their forest management plan. This is through a grant, from the Forest Service, and One of the Forest Service's goals there was to increase the emphasis on support to underserved communities, which in the Forest Service terms, I guess, if you own 1,500 acres or less of forest, which is pretty much about all the private forests in the state. So that'll be interesting. And then one of the things that we're waiting for in the budget is, and if it goes through, is to have some large scale field trials with cover crops and treated and untreated seeds, both to look at some cover crop things, also to look at what are going to be our how that impacts management with the
Carlisle is research on, types of cover crops that are different than we are now. We try to find if there's better or more alternatives. that we don't. Carl's a mixed bag. Oh, man. The meeting there. Or maybe October, we're working toward that, where they would give us a whole bunch of presentations on not only methane, but cover crops, forestry. Maybe have a day meeting there and then a half a day tour of Tompkins County, some projects in the fall. We're just beginning that.
Next CEA is going to be Highland, which is May 30th and 31st at the Wyoming County Business Center. So that's Division 1. And following the meeting, we'll take a nice hike of Letchworth State Park. So for our foreign partners, please join us. The Conservation Skills Workshop meeting pool was sent out. I've seen a lot of great ideas come in for topics as well as instructors. I believe that Tom is looking at the last week in September for this year's event, trying to avoid conservation field day events. Like volunteers trying to coordinate, but Tom will be sure to get there. Lots going on with our four-way partnership. I had a great meeting with Ryan Cunningham about a focus on DEC permitting for the upcoming municipal assistance subcommittee meeting. I also spoke with NYACD's Scott Ryan about DEC permitting complications that districts have, oftentimes waiting a year for stream permits to be turned around, and with the implications of flooding, infrastructure, and ecosystem damages, that 1 year is a detriment to getting conservation on the ground. Ryan and I also spoke about tabling at next year's NYACD Legislative Day for Taste of New York. I'm going to be having outreach, sort of a job vacancy announcement, as well as showcasing some district projects. I'm working with Troy Bishop to develop a statewide culture for conservation communication training, maybe in conjunction with conservation skills, having a classroom component that goes over working with the press, writing a press release, how to deal with tricky questions from the media, and that shifting outdoors with a photography section, focusing on really good before and after photos, what not to photograph on a farm, and, you know, just really having a nice one-day training for that. I know years ago, when I first came out of the districts, there would be two really great media trainings throughout the year, one between the fall and spring. We're trying to bring that back. Time to be on the lookout for our April CEA newsletter. Hope to have that out early next week. Thank you.
Region 4, similar to other regional coordinators, getting back into the field, trying to get out and see some AM18 projects prior to the May 1st deadline, particularly with some newer staff who are kind of putting stuff together towards the deadline. As time allows, and in between some board meetings. It's always a time of year to get back into these districts and those particular legislators. So I try to get names with faces, talk programs, trying to gently get them on board and not overwhelm them with information on district law and things like that, but kind of have these conversations continue as they go in the hopes that allow them to kind of stick with it and stick around as board members for years to come. Always good to have veterans on staff. And then lastly, some of the bigger news that work in the Lake Champlain region, the 5 districts that border the lake. We've been getting a lot of special project funding for forest and rural road implementation, erosion control workshops, phosphorus reduction loading projects, and soil health is a big initiative for them too. The basin program operates in Vermont, so it's very Vermont centric, but we've been getting more funds kind of directly to DEC and then route direct markets for district work, which is nice to see. So we don't necessarily compete with Vermont programs and Quebec programs, to get that money out directly to the projects. I have 2 new contracts coming through. All indications for the basin program is that the federal dollars continue to increase. The budgets look very good. So, in collaboration with all the stuff that we put out, a lot of similar projects that we put together. So, hotels of that, I hope to see some more district staff come on board and some of those comments to kind of help facilitate those programs. And one particular one is going to be known as the coordinator for Champlain Basin from the side. And hopefully that person should be on with the summer facility. That's not too much important. So. A couple of things, post-water conservation saw a rise in data management requests and GIS support. So we're working with a couple of additional districts in developing either a specific data management databases or suite. So 3,000, whatever they want. So approaching, I think, 10 districts now with one databases. Maybe a little bit of a backlog at this point, so I'm kind of telling my friends would be a little bit. But typically I'll meet with the district initially, show them an example of an existing database, the different options that are available. We kind of go through what they may want, and I kind of give them that database to kind of mess around with a little bit. And then I'll revisit after a couple of weeks and we'll start working on developing something specific. So have quite a few of those to be working on. I know Suffolk County was very intrigued and very interested, so that was a fun conversation with them. The SW sheets for our programs, that's been a big workload. We're kind of in the final phases now, we're buttoned up for CRF 8. For those that don't know what SW sheets are, it's basically a workbook now, so various supporting documents for an application to one of our programs. We're hoping to be more consistent across all of our programs. So the look and feel is hopefully the same, maybe a few changes here and there, but kind of the feedback I've been getting from districts is they're looking forward to these changes. There could be a few growing things, but hopefully CRFA, sorry. Also, a few large-scale watershed analyses are coming through, so working with districts on land data sets, figuring out how many in the bag, specific maybe row crops and stuff like that, whether it's for 9 element plans or any other type of plan. So we're doing that type of stuff, and then in addition to that, they also want like what have we implemented in those watersheds to a HUC 12 level across all of our programs. So some watersheds are simpler than others, and some can be a little bit more complicated. Okay. All right.
I'll just give the committee an update on bond act funding. So we put in an initial request for bond act funds to be incorporated into the Ag non-point source and aim-based programs. As part of that process, we had to put together pretty basic eligibility guidelines, which really just define who can apply, what types of projects are eligible. And those had to be put out for public comment. Those were published, and the public comment period closed on April 12th. So Greg and I are going to be working together to respond to a couple of the comments that we received. I think in total, we got, comments from 5 different individuals. A couple of them were mainly questions and clarifications on what it meant, what some of the guideline language meant. Specifically, Bond Act funding can only be used to support implementation projects that are like structural in nature and have a bondable lifespan of 10 years. So we relate that back to the NRCS lifespans that are defined in our Ag BMP systems catalog. So they were just asking for clarification on what that meant. So we're going to be working on putting responses together for those, and I believe the comments and responses are then posted on the DEC's website. In addition to developing the eligibility guidelines, we did put in an initial request for funding, but the dollar amounts have not been decided upon yet, so more to come on that. And then going forward, depending on how much funding we're able to get, I don't anticipate that we would be able to offer the entire amount in one round, but likely just for administrative purposes, we would split it up, over the course of 5 years.
Lots of program design discussions to be had from most of the bones are existing program criteria, right? But there are specific legal requirements to bond that programs will have to adhere to. So, yeah, we have some relevant for those spots.
Anything else again?
Well, me?
Yeah, you.
Well, I will say, last week we were able to actually, 2 weeks ago, able to post another position. So I should give that quick staff update. So there is a position right now out of New York State Jobs, and that is for essentially grades backfill. So an AA position to be able to take on the English program specifically, as well as training and tool development, coursework. Team that will submit here. So please believe this Thursday is the expiration for that. So we'll be able to assess resumes and bring back more information. So it's been awesome working with the department and retention issues as well, and being able to really invest in staff. So how many years? Over many years, we've been talking about a lot of this, and it's coming to fruition.
Anything else anyone want to bring up? Next meeting date would be May 21st.
Yep, that would be if we did want to have one in May.
May 21st. We'll do it online. Everybody that has to come online we won't be centrally located.
And I do believe we found out that there is a new system in the Syracuse office.
Any miracles happen?
A miracle stuff. Yeah, so
That was a dinosaur. If Tyler wasn't there, we could have gone with that.
we're gonna test out using it actually at the end of this month for our state revenue advisory committee. So I think we'll be back to offering Albany, Syracuse, and hybrid.
Go back to where we were.
Yeah.
May 21st, next meeting, everybody.
Get a correction, please. That the expiration for that job is April 21st.
Michael.
Good. We're able to extend it.
It's still on the website.
Thank you all for coming. The meeting is adjourned. Sorry.